For Premanande Hariva, all glorious to the sound devotees, all glorious to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Oma Gyanatvanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Taksuramilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Yadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shigro Shiyuta Padakamalam Shigrum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vidham Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Prijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Svitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanshina Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prashubhanu Siddhadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpa Dhruvyascha Kripa Sindhuvyavacha Patiranam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranitinanda Chadvaiti Gadadhar Shivastati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya To Prabhupada Lilamrita Chapter in Every Town and Village, Nairobi, September 9th, 1971. Srila Prabhupada disembarked. Is that an echo? In Nairobi from the East African Airlines 747 jet. He wore a wool charda over his shoulders and carried the same white vinyl attaché case he had taken with him all over the world. Flanked by his secretary and servant, he walked with his cane across the airfield toward the terminal building. Inside he sat on a cloth-covered chair and joined in the kirtan, while Indians and Africans gathered around to watch. Kul Bhushana, a journalist and friend of Prahladananda Swami's, approached Srila Prabhupada with questions. He asked Prabhupada what he had come to teach, and Prabhupada answered, "Modern civilized man has forgotten his relation with Krishna, or God, and is therefore suffering. Whether you're a Hindu, Muslim, or Buddhist, that does not matter. Unless you reestablish a relation with God, you cannot be happy. Have you come only for the Hindus?" asked Mr. Bhushana. "No," Prabhupada replied. "For everyone, Mr. Bhushana. East Africa, especially Kenya, is one of those countries which enjoys a great amount of racial harmony and brotherhood of man. What is your special message you can bring to Kenya?" To Prabhupada. That brotherhood of man can be complete when they're in God consciousness. Otherwise, it will again break. Mr. Bhushana. Your disciples will be taking special efforts to reach the Africans rather than confine themselves to the Hindus. That is very important here in this country. To Prabhupada, our method is the same. The method is so powerful that it appeals to everyone. We do not have to convey a new method for a new place. The method is the same, universal, to appeal to everyone. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, chapter, what's the text name? Chapter 16. The description of Jambudvi. I don't think I'm going to read the Sanskrit prose. Well, you can read the prose, and let's just read the translation of purport. Translation of purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Text number 4. The great saint Rishi Sukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, there is no limit in the expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's material energy. This material energy is a transformation of the material qualities, Sattva Gun, Rajagun, and Tamagun. No one can possibly explain it perfectly, even in a lifetime, as long as that of Brahma. No one in the material world is perfect, and an imperfect person cannot describe this material universe accurately, even after continued speculation. O king, I shall nevertheless try to explain to you the principal regions such as Goloka, Loka, with their names, forms, measurements, and various symptoms. Purport: the material world is only 1/4 of the Supreme Personality of Godhead's creation, but it's unlimited and impossible for anyone to know or describe, even with the qualification of a life as long as that of Brahma, who lives for millions and millions of years. Modern scientists and astronomers try to explain the cosmic situation and the vastness of space, and some of them believe that all the glittering stars are different suns. In the Bhagavad Gita, however, we understand that all these stars, nakshatras, are like the moon, in that they reflect the sunshine. They're not independent luminaries. Bhuloka is explained to be that portion of outer space through which the heat and light of the sun extend. Therefore, it is natural to conclude that this universe extends in space as far as we can see and encompasses the glittering stars. Srila Shukadeva Goswami admitted that to give full details of this expansive material universe would be impossible. But nevertheless, he wanted to give the king as much knowledge as he had received through the parampara system. We should conclude that if one cannot comprehend the material expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one certainly cannot estimate the expansiveness of the spiritual world. The Brahma Samhita 533 confirms this. Advaitam achutam anadim anantarupam adyam paranam purusham navyogunam sha. The limits of the expansions of Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, cannot be estimated by anyone, even a person as perfect as Brahma, not to speak of tiny scientists whose senses and instruments are all imperfect, and who cannot give us information of even this one universe. We should therefore be satisfied with the information obtainable from Vedic sources as spoken by authorities like Shukadeva Goswami. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskadyade. Srimad Bhagavatam is a progression from, as all the other books such as Bhagavad Gita, to bring us from the beginning of self-realization to the perfection of self-realization, which is found beginning in the 10th canto. Generally, there's a class of people who like to skip to the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. Now, perhaps Pariksha Maharaj was qualified to immediately hear the 10th canto, but even Shukadeva Goswami did not begin with the 10th canto for Pariksha Maharaj, although he had only 7 days left to live. But for us, it's more important to go step by step through the different cantos in order to understand what the 10th canto is actually about. In the second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada explains that to hear about Krishna's pastimes in the material world for the conditioned soul is more important than hearing about his pastimes in the internal energy. In other words, if we can't see Krishna here in this material world, we won't be able to see him in the spiritual world either. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita, is this too loud? Okay. Well, I don't mind it. I want to listen to the class myself. Okay, no problem. Yeah, no, it's all right. I'm not okay. Surround sound. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains, tries to emphasize how to take Krishna consciousness step by step. Because without that, we may imagine ourselves to be on some platform, we're actually not. Therefore, we have to understand the step-by-step process of Krishna consciousness. Beginning with the fact that Krishna consciousness comes in different stages, as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. This is the science, irrefutable science of Krishna consciousness. No sane person can doubt the existence of the soul, because everyone, the most immediate experience we have is that of our changing body and the fact that we don't change. So we're actually not at all influenced by the material nature, except that we experience it. To experience something doesn't necessarily we have to be influenced by it. By experience, we might be influenced by it, and therefore most souls in this material world are simply interested in external experience with no information about the fact that they have an internal experience also. Because internal experience means Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So at least one should try to internally experience the fact that we're eternal. And then a little progression from that, understand that there's a guide who can help us understand ourselves as souls, and he can understand our existence as the Supreme Soul, who's the Supreme Soul. Now with Paramatma's guide and Krishna's information, Bhagavad Gita, one has to understand that there must be something supreme beyond ourselves, because as Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna was quite surprised seeing Krishna, his friend on a chariot, suddenly turn into a universal form. One moment, Krishna had blooming eyes like lotus petals, etc. He was dressed the garlands on the battlefield as his chariot driver. And the next moment, when Arjuna asked him to show his universal form, he had thousands of heads and thousands of faces, and some of them were eating the warriors on the battlefield. Suddenly his friend had turned into him. He was eating non-veg on the battlefield. So he was quite surprised. He always thought his friend was a vegetarian, strict vegetarian. But now he's eating soldiers. And not only that, but we've heard of dragons. The Krishna was through his mouth, so many fire was coming. And we were told that his devotees don't smoke. But obviously Krishna was breathing fire. It's quite a bit of smoke. So Arjuna was surprised and he asked Krishna, Akyati ko me bhavan udrupa, mostly deva parapasita, yati mishami vantamadhyam, hi prajanami tava pravritim. Pravritim, well, what is this all about? Why are you displaying this form? So then Krishna says, Kala Smi Lokashe Krit Pravido, Lokam Samahartam Yahapravita, Itepi Tvam Namu Vishanti Sarve, Yavastita Praknikeshu Yoda. Time I am, and I've come here to destroy everyone. That includes all of us here right now, by the way. This is all in the present right now. We're all being destroyed by our best friend who's on the altar here playing the flute. His hidden life is he's time, and he's killing all of us. He is as Krishna is great in every respect, so he's also the greatest terrorist, killing everyone in this universe. And yet, if you call the police and say, there's a terrorist in our temple, and I thought he was quite sweet. He had a flute, and he had a girlfriend, and they were always smiling. But now I find out that behind the scenes, he's killing everyone. Please come and arrest him. No, first of all, no one would believe that. They don't even believe our deities are real, but to speak of the fact that they're everyone's heart, that he's controlling the minute and the infinite, and in the form of time, he's destroying everything in this universe. And he claims the Bhagavad Gita, which we can understand, we have some faith in. Again and again, he's manifesting this universe, and then again, and he's destroying it. And there's not even one tear in his eyes. With all these universes being destroyed at the same time, he has no regrets whatsoever. What kind of cruel, heartless person can create a universe, have everyone run around thinking that this is going to be the best one yet, and then as soon as things get a little bit better, then everything is annihilated, and then they have to start all over again. So Krishna explains this all in Bhagavad Gita, but we should understand whether we like it or not, we're all under time. And everyone is growing. This body that we have has a time limit, and it always goes with old age, birth, growth, maintenance, old age, diminishing. Then we have to leave this body, and we have another body, spiritual and material, we have to take. But no one can deny time, because time is changing everything. And no matter how great scientists we are, no matter how austere we become, like Hiranyakashipu was much greater than any scientist. He was able to detach himself completely from his material experience, so much so that the ants, the moths, the worms were eating his body, and he remained in his bones. So though he was a demon, he was at least understood that he was not his body, although remaining in his bones the moths could not eat his false ego, and therefore he remained there with his false ego, thinking how wonderful he was, and how eventually he fulfilled his desire to lord over the universe, and eventually get so powerful that he could go to Brahmaloka and take Lord Brahma's place. In any case, time was not on his side, although he had performed such an austerity, inconceivable austerity, still at the proper time, according to his destiny, as we could say, he developed a very acute stomach ailment, and then he left his body. So time is influencing everyone here, and even one atom in our body, we may think this is my body, but how many atoms are we controlling right now in this body that we think is ours? We cannot even influence even one electron. We can't even see there's such a thing as electron. We don't even know what the body is really made of. The scientists give us one vision, Ayurveda gives us a different one. But what's going on inside this body? Who's living there? If you have a house and then suddenly all these people come into your house, would you want to find out who's in your house, who they are? So we're in this body, this is our house, Griha, and we have so many visitors who are living with us. We don't even know who they are. So what do we actually know? We don't know who we are. We don't know where we are. We don't know who's living with us. We don't know how long we're going to be in this body, where we're going next. And yet we imagine that we're controlling everything. And we can't control anything in this material universe. Therefore, we need some guide to get out of this place. Because this place, as Krishna said, is made for Dukkalya Ashastata. If we're looking for eternal happiness, this is not the proper place to look for it. Because the person who's created, maintains, and annihilates this universe says that this is a place, a temporary place full of misery. Therefore, we should find out what this place is, as Krishna says in the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Kshetra Kshetraya Enam Antaragana Chakusha Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Cha Ye Vidur Yakti Kshetra. That those who can see the difference between the soul, between the knowers of the body and the body. Kshetra Kshetraya Evam Antara Jnana Chakshusha. The difference under a jnana, by knowledge, chakshusa, by seeing through knowledge. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get some vision so we can find out how to get a perspective on what's going on, get some knowledge of what's going on, assimilate it, and then get a perspective of what we're supposed to do here. So we can actually get to an existence full of happiness that goes on forever. Bhuta Prakriti Moksham Ja. So the Bhuta, we ourselves are living in these Prakriti, and the material nature, Moksham, to get liberated from material nature. This is not the place we're supposed to come to make a happy, peaceful situation, create our empire, and live here happily ever after, like in the movies. But happily ever after, even the movie doesn't live happily ever after. But it's because of the people in it. Buddha Prakriti Ye Viduri and then one can actually go to the real place that we want to go to and live happily ever after. That's where the phrase comes from, living happily ever after. That's called Krishna consciousness. So people call us escapists. So if you're in a prison, you're being tortured in all the movies we see. The heroes in some prison being tortured. So what does he do? He thinks, well, I don't want to be an escapist. I should stay here and be tortured. No, he's always escaping from the prison. That's why he's a hero. Otherwise, if he stayed there being tortured by the villains, he'd be considered crazy. Who would make a movie out of such a foolish person? Goes to a prison, gets tortured there, and just stays there and gets tortured unhappily ever after. So that's why some Buddha Prakriti Moksha, Yea Viduriyani. So we have to understand both where we are now and where we should go. So this fifth canto gives us some perspective on it. So we can find out there's no place, Brahma Buddha Brahma Prasanatma, Brahma Buddha Loka, Panavartanojana, Homo Peti Tukontea Panardana. From the highest planet down to the lowest, they're all places of misery where repeated birth and death take place. One who takes my abode never takes birth again. Therefore, to understand where we are and how to get out of this place and why we should get out of this place and why we're wasting our time being here, this is necessary to make any progress in spiritual life. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also mentions that let's see, he says that he's going to tell us about the demons, the 16th chapter. So, who are those demons? Like Ramananda Prabhu at that time. He was in the class, and there Prabhupada was always talking about the Mayavadi. And Brahmananda was wondering, here we are, 26 Deccan Avenue, so far from India. Swamiji has come, and he's talking so often about these Mayavadis in India. So Brahmananda Prabhu thought that maybe Prabhupada got into a fight with the Mayavadis in India, left India, but the fight was so intense he couldn't forget. So therefore, even America was complaining about it. And then one day during class, Prabhu realized that actually who those Mayavadis were. It was the devotees sitting in the class. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna includes the 16th chapter, and he says, Pravatim Cha Navritim Cha, Dana Navidar Asara, the Socham Napikacharo, the Satyam Yeshu Vidide. Those who are demoniac don't know what's to be done, what's not to be done. Neither cleanliness, nor truthfulness, nor proper behavior is found in them. One time, well, before I joined the movement, I had some spiritual realization one day without any drugs. And I decided I'd find out what the truth was. So I took up Hatha Yoga, studied astrology, became a vegetarian, all within a couple of days. Then I was practicing yoga so many hours a day while I was going to college and studying so many books. Didn't know whether I was trying to become Brahman realized or Paramatma realized, I developed mystic powers. Anyhow, I probably came to Buffalo in 1969, and as a devotee, I'd go up and see Prabhupada every day. Before I went to the university and sit there while he talked to me or some other devotee, or maybe some guests would come. So one day, one day Prabhupada was talking to me for a long time, giving me instructions about so many things I didn't know. I was asking him questions. And one time I asked Prabhupada a question. Some other devotees were there. I said, "True Prabhupada, if Krishna wants me to do something, or if Krishna doesn't want me to do something, how will I know what Krishna wants me to do?" Because I thought I was Paramatma realized or something. The Prabhupada looked at me and started to laugh. He usually, whenever I ask him a question, he usually laugh, give me some reply. And so Prabhupada looked at me and he said, "You won't know what to do." And he started laughing louder. He said, "You'll do the wrong thing." And everyone else started to laugh. And then Prabhupada gave me this look of compassion because he didn't want me to get upset. He didn't really want to embarrass me. He was just As I'm sometimes a little sarcastic, he was even more sarcastic with me than I could imagine. In any case, we think we know what's going on, but we have no idea what's going on in conditioned mind. We're just either instruments for the mercy of the spiritual master coming to session, or we're just playthings in the hands of the illusory energy, just playing around with it. Therefore, Krishna says, Asatyam apratishtam te, jagaro varnishram, aparashparam sambudyam, kimanya kama haitutam. Those who don't know is praviti and avriti, who don't have perfect cleanliness, perfect proper behavior, perfect truthfulness, they're living a dreamland where they imagine themselves to be a body. If someone asks us who you are, and you say, I'm so and so, but that's not who we really are. If a bank robber goes and robs a bank, holds a gun to the teller's head, and the teller says, he has a mask on, the teller says, who are you? And he said, I'm a bank robber. He's not really telling the complete truth because he has another real identity behind that mask. So similarly, when we identify ourselves with this body, we're really living a lie, the worst lie possible. We're completely untruthful. We think that these things are mine. My body is mine. So many things are mine, but this is demoniac. So we're aspiring to become devotees, and we're influenced by demoniac consciousness, and therefore we have to make progress by practicing sadhana bhakti. Otherwise, asatyam. Anyone who identifies themselves and misidentifies themselves with this body thinks everything is temporary. Think I'm temporary, although I'm eternal. So we think the deities are temporary, the world, everything's temporary. They don't understand the eternality of the deities, even our own eternality. Asatyam, untruthful. Asatyam, apratishtam. They think everything is unsteady, out of control. Apratishtam, jagara, and ishram. There's no controller behind everything. I can control, I can do things independently of Paramatma. I'm independent. Krishna says, for me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Well, Krishna knows something and I know something that he doesn't know. So this is all part of our illusion. And with all these different misconceptions, then we think the aim of life is just to become a Romeo or a Juliet or a Tarzan or a Jane or Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. We think I'm here to make love in the material world to become the supreme enjoyer. So this Krishna says, people think, oh, they're in love, they're doing so many wonderful things, creating that, supporting society with their, working hard to maintain their family, paying their taxes, they're doing such wonderful things. Krishna says, Etam drishtim avashtavya, nashtatmano naburiya, pravanyuga karma, shaya jagadohita. They're doing horrible things. Oh, everyone who's not in Krishna consciousness is doing horrible, unbeneficial things, and they're adding to the destruction of this world. That's all. I mean, how much they recycle their waste, whatever, it's all part of the destruction. Destroying people's consciousness, destroying the environment. Without God consciousness, everything goes to hell. We can have a whole seminar on how by this demonic mentality, they're killing the bull, they're killing the cow, making everything so complicated by creating the machines to plow the land and get the food. And therefore they need factories and resources such as oil, petroleum, whatever it is. They just make everything more and more complicated before until everything just collapses. And they think they're making progress. But actually progress is making progress out of our material consciousness. That's the only progress into Krishna consciousness. And therefore Krishna has explained, beginning of this fifth canto, as we see in the beginning of it, it's all not fun and games in the material world. And everyone who knows what's going on here, they advise us to get out of here. Marty Shabde, Priyavrata Maharaj, they're all saying, get out of this place as soon as possible. Their experience. And everyone else who's trying to enjoy it, they're just wasting their time. For Rava, Urvasi, there's so many attractions, but it's all full of anxiety and temporary. Therefore, we need the fifth canto to describe where we are. So some scientist doesn't come along and tell us it came out of nothing. It was all disorganized. Of course, to understand the fifth canto is not so easy, because we don't understand hardly anything, really. Although we're quite proud that we've understood everything, which is even worse than not understanding anything. Our brains are so filled up with this mental speculation coming from the scientists that we think that the Bhagavatam is mental speculation. Just like to give an example, here is describing Jambudweep. So we're on Jambudweep. Jambudweep is a place where there's it's described in this canto that there's a tree, a Jambudweep fruit tree. And therefore it's called Jambudweep, an island. So it's an island. Of course, we can go in, we have so many, Prabhupada didn't try to, in his commentaries, he didn't try to disturb us by saying it was flat. Because otherwise we'd spend all our time arguing with each other whether it's flat or round. Never, he didn't want to waste our time, because it doesn't really matter whether you die in a flat place or a round place, you die anyhow. It's not that Jambudweep's flat or we're safe. We're not going to roll off. That's like here, we're in Australia. So people are amazed. People here in Australia, they're upside down. But they, somewhere or another, they don't fall off. But that's how, don't question too much, because otherwise you'd be anti-scientific. So there is a lot of information, the fact that what's described by the scientists is completely mental speculation. It's unscientific. In any case, Jambudweep is described as being different varshas, and we're on Bard Varsha. Not even on Bard Varsha, actually. We're on 1/3 of Bard Varsha. So this is Bhagavatam is presented, Prabhupada didn't generally get into it so much. When he was asked, I believe, is the earth round or flat? And he said, wherever I walk, it's flat. And we could go into that, anyone can investigate. But why did Prabhupada say we didn't go to the moon, for instance? Because if they went to the moon, and according to them, there was no life there, then it would contradict the Vedic, the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because Chandraloka is a heavenly planet. Therefore, Prabhupada defended the Bhagavatam by disputing the fact that they didn't go to the moon. He had one servant, Purushottam, Govindadasi, as we read in the Lamrita, brought in the television set so that the devotees could watch the moon landing. I was a devotee at that time. I was in Paris. I never found out they went to the moon until years later. I was too much busy. I was booked as usual to worry where they. I didn't even know. We never even read a newspaper back then because there was no electronic newspapers. You had to buy one. We had no money to buy one, so I had no idea what was going on. In any case, Prabhupada was sitting there watching the moon landing, so-called moon landing, and he said it's all bogus. And Purushottam, his servant, was there and started arguing with Prabhupada. But Prabhupada was seeing it. It's right there on the television. Now, years later, decades later, when I finally saw the moon landing, it's like a cartoon. I mean, even before that, there was some movie about space or whatever, Kubrick or something, put out something about Space Odyssey. And that looked a lot more real than the moon landing, by the so-called moon shadows. And, they planted the flag and it started to wave because the flag was so ecstatic being on the moon that it just, even though there's no wind on the moon, there's no atmosphere, it just started to shiver out of ecstasy. Or maybe the astronaut transferred his ecstasy into the flag and so it started to wave. In any case, so many discrepancies. Vashana Pina Pashiti. They're seeing it, it's right before their eyes, and yet they can't see because it interferes with their imagination that one day I'm going to become Romeo and Juliet. And when they gradually find out about Radha and Krishna, then they say, well, that's even better than Avatar or something. But we should hear these things, and then gradually, as we follow the process, then maybe we'll start accepting that actually this is not the place. I should be making my permanent plans here, make some progress to create some kind of empire in the future. Even when we become devotees, we start out as I'm just a bhakta. Of course, when I joined the movement, the ladies started out as, we called them gopis. All the ladies were gopis. The men were just Prabhu. The ladies would go, but gradually they became mothers, so that was a big fall down, they thought, from gopi to mother. It went from Madhurya Rasa to Vatsalya. But actually, we're not these bodies, these identities. So in any case, we started out as Prabhus and gopis, and then gradually it was Madhajis and Prabhus, and now it's sometimes Prabhus and Prabhus. And then if you're a Prabhu, when finally 1969, we heard something about Brahmins. We were Brahmins. And if you wanted to get any status in the movement, it was understood you should become a Brahmin. Rush to Brahmanism. And I got initiated at the beginning of February 69, became a Brahmin in April 69. Fast tracked. And then I was a Brahmin, and then I had to become a temple. I wanted to become a temple president and keep up with the progress. Probably send me probably told my temple president, send me somewhere, as he was sending everyone, become a temple president. Then I became a temple president, different places. And then you had to become a TBC, then a sannyasi. Otherwise, you wouldn't make any progress. And the more we thought like that, the less progress in Krishna consciousness we made. And therefore, Krishna made it clear all the misery you had to become as you progressed from to Brahmin. It wasn't so difficult, but when he became a temple president, that's when the real problem started. And then when it became a sannyasi, GBC, as the dream goes on, then I'm getting a kingdom. Then you find out, no, you may think you're making progress in controlling, and the more you think like that, the less you can control. You can't even control your own mind, but to speak of anyone else's mind. So whether a devotee, aspiring devotee, a demigod, what else? The goal of life is to become Krishna conscious. And the devotees who are sometimes the most Krishna conscious, are sometimes those who are seemingly the least controllers of this. But in any case, we're all being controlled by Krishna, and therefore there's no impediment to having any position in the material world. Just stay in whatever position, whatever service, every service is equally valuable. And with one's body, mind, and word, understand what you hear about Krishna, about how to utilize this material energy that we're being given, and then utilize it in Krishna's service, and that way we can conquer Krishna, become eligible to develop love for Krishna, and by love of Krishna be able to conquer him. So it's necessary to take seriously what Krishna has already given us and understand, hear about how to utilize it in Krishna's service, big or small. And by doing that, remember Krishna and make progress towards getting out of this misconception of God. Otherwise, we'll be just wasting our time here, birth after birth. And if we just jump to the 10th canto and hear about Krishna's romance and misuse this material energy that we've been given, then we'll have to come back, and not necessarily in a very pleasant. We may be appreciating Krishna, that's very good, like the Prakriti Sahajis. But they don't necessarily make very tangible progress in actually resolving their misconceptions about being the laws of enjoyers of this material energy, until they finally agree to utilize whatever energy Krishna gives them properly in Krishna's service. And in this age, it means utilize it to spread Krishna consciousness by teaching people practically the value of the holy name. The holy name begins with hearing and chanting Krishna's name, not to jump to Krishna's pastimes. Because we can't experience Krishna in his name, we won't experience him in his form, or his qualities, his associates, or his pastimes. And we jump to the pastimes right away without experiencing fully his name, his quality, his associates. Then the pastimes will simply remain material as much as everything else will remain material for us. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Yes. But here we are. We wonder, where are you? Are we in Oz? Or in New Zealand? We're on Jambudweep. We're on Jambudweep. We may not be able to see the jumbo tree from here, but it's there somewhere. This is telling us where we actually are in terms of the illusory energy. We're not in New Zealand. We're not on Earth. We're on Jambudweep right now. This is what Bhagavatam says. This is close to reality, and we're just a little part of Jambudweep, known as Bharatvarsha, a little part of 1/3 of Bharatvarsha, and a little surrounded by the salt ocean. So we should know where we are. So that's how, and the rest of the Bhagavad, we're in a body, and everyone else is in a body. We're all spiritual beings, illusioned by the three modes of nature. Everyone has their different qualities of nature. And the only thing we can do right now, everyone, if they chant Hare Krishna, their life, what they're doing is perfect. So we're surrounded by people doing perfect activities, as long as we're surrounded by devotees. As soon as we step out, we should see how unfortunate these people are that they're not engaged in these five powerful activities. They're not engaged in sadhana bhakti. They're just wasting their time in illusion, being led by false people, false leaders, or blind, is leading everyone else to the darkest region of existence in Kali Yuga. So we should see that. We're in a place in Kali Yuga which is becoming more and more degraded day after day because people are not Krishna conscious. And we've been given the opportunity to help people become Krishna conscious. So we should know what our duty is. So we don't fall into the stream of people going to the darkest regions of existence. So these things are necessary. Otherwise we think we're on Earth, we're in New Zealand, then we're bewildered. Then we're just thinking Bhagavatam is, a story. The real story is in Time magazines, whatever newspaper there is. That's just another illusory story people will tell. Does that make sense? Hope so. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for the wonderful class, Maharaj. You were talking about Hiranyakashipu, and somebody asked me a question that Hiranyakashipu did tapasya for a very long time. I think it says thousands of years, tens of thousands of years in some accounts. But Kayadu was pregnant with Prahlad Maharaj before Hiranyakashipu went to do the tapasya. But then when Hiranyakashipu comes back, Prahlad Maharaj is only 5 years old. So if Hiranyakashipu did tapasya for thousands of years, how come Prahlad Maharaj is only 5 years old when he comes back?
Well, first of all, we have to understand, Hiranyakashipu supposedly did tapasya for 120 years, I guess, of the demigods, whatever it is, in Satya Yuga. So time in Satya Yuga, people, I don't know all the details. Time goes differently from our conception of time here. They say when you're enjoying, everything goes quicker. So he was there, and Prahlad Maharaj was in the womb, and Narada Muni was preaching to his mother, Ayadu, for that the whole time. So time went, 120 years of the demigods. That's for 120 years. What that 120 years is could have been just like a few minutes of art. What we experience is a few minutes or a year or whatever it is. For him, it was 120 years. I mean, what that 120 years is relative to our experience. Like when, another example is when Revati Kayat, I forget his name, Revati went with her Kudami, I forget his name. Kukumi went to Brahmaloka, and Brahma said, just wait a few minutes. And the Gandharvas are giving a answer, and it's almost over, and then I'll talk to you. So then a few minutes went by in Brahma's lifetime, and they said, all right, what can I do for you? He said, well, my daughter Revati, she needs a husband, can you recommend someone? He said, well, actually your whole dynasty has passed away since you've been here. And even those who have ever heard of your dynasty have all passed away. I mean, therefore, I can't recommend anyone because you don't have a dynasty anymore to recommend. But if you go immediately without asking any questions, and Balaram's appearing right now on the planet Earth, if you get there in time, and you can offer your daughter to him. The time in our conception is not real reality, it's our conception. So when it says Hiranyakashipu was standing at the tip of his toes for so many years, exactly what that means in terms of our time, our experience, or Prahlad was in the womb during that time, that we may not be able to understand so rapidly, how time is working, especially in Satya Yuga. Anything else? Thank you very much, Brother Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.
Prahladananda Swami Maharaj ki jai.